Welcome to Mark Gibson's Humanoids channel. Accountant with designations CPA, MBA, CMA, ACPA, ASA, Australia. Enjoy learning!
So working capital management, it refers to the administration and control of the more liquid resources to make sure that they are sufficient to cover the day-to-day business operations, including anticipated contingencies. So our objective is to generate additional income, reduce amount of investment, and needed support needed to support the sales and production. So class, pag working capital, alam naman natin na this is just what? Your current asset minus your current liabilities. So meaning to say, kung ano yung mga uh, items within your current assets and current liabilities, those are the items that we're managing here. So ano ba yung mga pasok sa current assets natin? So you have your cash. Kaya later on, we'll discuss about cash management then. And then you have your AR, your inventory, your prepaid expenses. No? But this time, we're dealing more on highly liquid assets. No? So it's going to be your cash, your AR, and then your inventory. Okay. So working capital is just, like I said, I've discussed this earlier. It's just the total difference of the total current assets and total current liabilities. So what are the advantages of adequate working capital? Pamute naman ako. Parang batang-bata yung nasa klase natin. No? Sige lang. Nakaligtaan tayo nung isa nating kasama sa call eh. Hindi ko makita sino yung i-mute ko eh.
Nakakong ba? Sorry.
Okay na? Okay na yata. Okay, sige. Balik ako dun sa discussion. Okay, so what are the advantages of adequate working capital? Ibig sabihin adequate is sapat lang, no? So una, solvency of the business. Goodwill, goodwill in this case is not the intangible asset, no? But rather this is the relationship that you build, no? With third party. Easy loans, cash discounts, kasi nga you have adequate working capital, so you can pay outright. So therefore, you get cash discounts, regular supply of raw materials, regular payments, ability to face crisis, quick and regular return on investment, exploitation of favorable market conditions. So class, in number 9, no, when you say exploitation, you can participate in favorable market conditions. So paano yan? Previously, I discussed about stocks, no? Yung stocks nung Dito Corporation, no? So right now they have the franchise. They're now in operations, no? Ito yung sinasabi niya third network, no? So right now the stock price is really increasing. So if you have adequate working capital, you can participate or you can exploit those kind of favorable market conditions. And number 10, high morale. So what are now the disadvantages of having excessive, so sobrang working capital naman? So number 1, idle funds, no? Unnecessary purchasing, overall inefficiency, low rate of return on investment, It gives rise to a speculative transaction. Relationships with banks may not be maintained. Oops. So those are the disadvantages of excessive working capital, no? Okay. So next is we have the operating cycle. Ito na. Operating cycle is the time from the beginning of the production process to collection of cash from the sale of finished goods, no? So it is calculated by adding average selling period plus average collection period. Later on, meron tayong problem to further discuss that, no? What about the cash conversion cycle? So this is the length of time required for a company to convert cash invested in its operations to cash received as a result of its operation. So CCC, so that's your cash conversion cycle. This is the difference between the operating cycle less average payment period. So meron ka kanina kung paano yung pag-compute ng operating cycle. This time, cash conversion cycle naman. Or you can compute it by adding average selling period plus the average collection period less the average payment period. Actually, dinerive lang natin yung formula ng operating cycle. Okay? Okay. So ito pa, meron pang pinrovide. Paano naman yung pag-calculate ng average selling period? So it's equals to 360 days. Ito class, the problem will tell you kung ano yung gagamitin. If it's 360 or 365. No? So in this case, let's just assume it's 360. So 360 over cost of goods sold over inventory. So that's average selling period. For collection period naman, tingnan mo yung mga magkaka-partner para hindi mo masyadong kailangan i-memorize. No? It's sales and accounts receivable. No? For payment naman, it's purchases and your accounts payable. Okay. So funding requirements and strategies. No? So there are two types of funding requirements. Number one is permanent, meaning there is constant investment in operating assets resulting from constant sales over time. No? Seasonal naman, if it's an investment in operating assets that varies over time as a result of cyclic sales. So ang difference lang yan is pag sinabing seasonal, it could be there's a peak, no, in the business. So let's give an example, no, especially in tourist spots areas, no, tourist areas, the peak season in the Philippines would be the summertime, no. Pero syempre dahil COVID ngayon, hindi rin ma-distinguish, no, kasi meron yang pandemic. So there are also two types of strategies naman, no, in seasonal requirements. So we call it aggressive. Pag aggressive, we fund short-term debt and permanent requirements with long-term debt, no? So that's aggressive funding. Conservative naman, if both seasonal and its permanent requirements with long-term debts. Ayun. So mali ako. Ang aggressive, ang seasonal requirement niya is finance with short-term debt. So yun yung kaibahan ng aggressive. Pag aggressive, seasonal requirements is financed with short-term debt and permanent requirements with long-term debt. Pag conservative naman, ito, parehas finifinance ng long-term debts. Para mas ma-appreciate, let's go to problem. No? So problem 1 on cash conversion cycle. Isa-isahin natin, pero this time meron kasi akong solution na ulit. This is financial management. Sige. Question number 1. So kinuha ko lang ulit yung problem from the slide. Nilagay ko dito para mas mabilis tayo mag-discuss. No? Sige. In its 2017 annual report, Luz Vimin Corporation reported that it had revenues of 18 billion, cost of goods sold of 16.8 billion, accounts receivable of 2.4 billion, inventory of 2.1, and AP of 1.25 billion. Total purchases for the year was 11.25 billion. Determine the cash conversion cycle. So ito, isa-isahin natin, pero ang gawin nating approach is kunin lang muna natin yung mga given. No? So ito na rin yung formula how to get your cash conversion cycle. So in cash conversion cycle, you have to compute for the operating cycle. Pinrovide sa atin how to compute the operating cycle. It's the average selling period plus the average collection period. Let's now derive the formula. So average selling period, that's 360 over your COGS over inventory. So magkano yung COGS? Sabi dyan, 16.8 billion. So yan, highlight ko lang pag binabasa natin yung given. Next, inventory. How much is the inventory? It's 2.1 billion. So, kunin ko yung formula. It's 360 over your COGS and inventory. So, that's 45 days. Okay. Next is average collection period. So, it's 360 over what? Your sales and accounts receivable. How much is your sales? Given then, it's 18 billion. That's your revenue, no? And your accounts receivable is 2.4 billion. So, ayun, kunin ulit natin yung formula. It's 48 days. Okay, so next is your average payment period. Average payment period, it's 360 over purchases and AP. Given by purchases, yes, 11.25. Ayan. Over your accounts payable, 1.25 billion. So, the answer is 40 days, no? So, to calculate your cash conversion cycle, it's ASP, or the average selling period, which is 45, plus the average collection period of 48, less the average payment period of 40. So the total cash conversion cycle is 53. Okay? So may question ba kayo dito? Ato class, i-derive lang natin yung formula kasi very straightforward ng problem, no? But there could be problems na like hindi given si purchases. So all we need to do is, well, compute it by preparing yung pro forma na income statement. No? A question muna on cash conversion cycle. Sige, kung wala, let's proceed with number 2. Question number 2 on working capital and cash conversion cycle. O, sige. Punta ako sa question number 2. Laki ko muna to para lang makita nyo yung given. So, class ang tip ko palagi every time you solve a problem is first check yung ano muna yung required. Kasi like in this case, napakaraming data pero ang nire-require niya lang naman is to compute for the working capital. This time, alam mo na kung ano yung working capital. It's just the difference between what? Your total current asset and current liability. Okay? So, the balance sheet of Olive Industries for December 31, 2016 contains the following. The amount also pertains to average for the year, ayan, use 360 days, 360 working days. So you have your asset, your liabilities, and shareholders' equity. Sales for the year amounted to 720,000. Markup on cost is 60%. What is the working capital? Okay. O, sige. So, isa-send ulit natin. Kung napansin nyo, nilagay ko ulit yung formula. So, you have current asset and current liability. So, current assets, that's how much? 250,000. Paano na-compute? Ang ginawa ko is yung pinakamabilis, kinuha ko lang yung total asset less the net plant and equipment, no? Yung 156. Kasi alam natin na yung current assets dito would be your cash, your marketable securities, AR, and inventory. So that's 250,000 pesos. For the current liabilities, ayun, given naman din. So you have the accounts payable, 52.25, 56, mali pala ako, dapat to 56.25, and then 17,000 plus the 52,000 other current liabilities. So total working capital is 124,750. O class, wag na malilito ha. Inalis ko lang yung mga zero, pero yan din yun. So 406,000 less 156,000. So that's your current asset. Ito, inalis ko lang din yung zero para para mas mabilis. Ayan, baka kasi magtaka ka saan galing yung number. Okay? Next is ito. For sure this time, kabisado mo na to. So before we proceed with the solution, pwede bang pasubok lang muna yung cash conversion cycle? Ayan yung formula. Sige na. Okay. So how much is your cash conversion cycle? Isa-isahin ulit natin. ASP. So you have your COGS and inventory. At talagang consistent ako sa inventory ko. Okay. Pero this time, ang given sa atin is the sales, no? And then the markup on cost is 60%. So there's a way for you to derive how much would be your COGS, your cost of goods sold, no? So that's 450,000 pesos. Okay? And how much is your inventory? So that's 100,000. So given then. So your average selling period is 80. Nakasunod ba? 80 rin ba yung sagot niya? Okay, sige. Okay, thank you. Next is your ACP. So how much is your ACP? ACP is sales over accounts receivable. So meron ka sales, 720, given yan. And then accounts receivable of 60. So derive the formula, that's 30 days. And finally, you have your average. Your average payment period. So that's purchases and AP. So how much is your purchases? Ito, in this case kasi hindi provided yung purchases. So what I did is nag-workback lang ako. So I have my COGS So, nakalculate natin yan earlier. I have my ending inventory, which is 100,000. So, the goods available for sales, 550. And since we don't have data for the beginning inventory, I assume that the beginning inventory is 0. So, therefore, purchases is 550,000 over accounts payable given then, that's 56,250. So therefore, that's your average payment period is 36.8 or 37 days. No, so again, let's derive the formula to get the cash conversion cycle. So that would be 73 days. Okay. Sige. Kung walang question dyan, let's proceed with the next. Ito naman, funding requirement, no? Funding requirements and strategies. Sabi natin, there are two types of funding requirements, permanent and seasonal. Discuss natin yan earlier, no? But this time, let's calculate how much would be the cost if it's an aggressive strategy and if it's conservative strategy. Kanina, define natin ano yung difference ng dalawa. Sabi natin sa aggressive strategy, ang seasonal is financed by short-term debts and then permanent by long-term debt. Pag conservative naman, both seasonal and permanent are financed by long-term debts. No? Sige, apply natin sa problem para mas ma-appreciate. Question number 3. Okay. Sige. Ayan, nilagay ko lang din dito yung discussion natin sa aggressive funding at saka conservative funding para mas mabilis, no? So, USANA company has a permanent funding requirement of 300,000 in operating assets and seasonal funding requirements that vary between 0 and 800,000 and average 250,000. USANA can borrow short-term funds at 6.5% and long-term funds at 9%. And it can earn 5% on the investment of any surplus balances. So question number 1, what is the total cost of an aggressive strategy for seasonal funding? Number 2, what is the total cost of conservative strategy for seasonal funding? Isa-isay natin. Dito muna tayo kay aggressive. Kay aggressive, ang sabi natin, seasonal requirements with short-term and permanent requirements with long-term. Magkano ba yung permanent requirement natin dito? Permanent requirement is 300,000. So sabi natin, pag permanent requirements is financed with long-term debt. How much is the long-term funds rate, no? So that's 9%. So kinuha lang natin, multiply the value with the percentage of long-term debt. So that's 27,000. Okay? So hopefully nakakasunod ka. Kasi ang susunod naman is seasonal. Sabi natin, pag seasonal, parang when the need arises lang, no? So therefore, it's being financed with short-term debt, no? So in this case, the average value for short-term financing is 250,000 multiplied by 6.5%. So that's the rate for short-term funds. So that would be 16,250. So the total cost in an aggressive strategy is 43,250. Okay? Sige. So like I said, itong material natin, this is also posted already in Google Classroom. So kung gusto mong i-review yung answer natin, pwede mong balikan. No? Okay. Now let's go to conservative funding strategy. So sabi natin, pag conservative, both fund requirement, they're being financed with long-term debts, no? So paano yan? So how much is the permanent long-term, your permanent requirement is, it's 300,000. Pero this time, kukunin natin yung maximum seasonal funding requirement, no, which is at 800. So that's how we arrive with the 1.1 million there. So multiply by the long-term funds at 9%, so you'll get 99,000. Ngayon, dahil nga we're financing both permanent and seasonal funding requirement with long-term funds, meron tayong ngayong surplus cash, no? Kasi remember, ang average lang naman na kailangan mo for seasonal funding is 250,000. So paano yan? So meron kang surplus cash na pwede mong i-invest, no? So isa-isa natin. How much is your total funding? So that's 1.1 million. Pero from 1.1 million, magkano lang ba yung kailangan mo? Ibig sabihin, yung immediately needed to fund your operation. So that's your permanent fund requirement less the average seasonal requirement, no? So that's 300. Isa-isahin ko lang dito. So this is your total fund requirement. Pero yung total fund requirement mo, ano ba yung mga immediate lang? So you'll have your permanent requirement of 300 and average seasonal requirement of 250. So that's 1.1 million less 300 less 250. Meron ka ngayong surplus cash of 550,000. Ngayon sabi class, sabi ng problem, surplus balances may be invested and it can earn 5%. So therefore, to arrive with your total cost of conservative strategy, kailangan natin i-deduct yung earnings natin from surplus cash. That's 27,500. So therefore, total cost of conservative strategy is 71,500. So that's 99,000 from the permanent and seasonal requirement, less the earnings on surplus of 27,500. So that's 71,500. Okay? Okay. Sige. So I assume okay na tayo dyan. So let's move on to our next topic. So it's about management of cash. So there are three motives of holding cash balances. Number one, transaction motive. So where the transaction balances allow the firm to make payments that arise in the ordinary course of doing business. Precautionary, so buffer stock of liquid assets that can be drawn if there are unexpected demands for cash. And speculative motive, so it permits economic unit to take advantage of future income producing activities. No? So what are the different management techniques in controlling cash flows? Number one, float management. It involves controlling the collection and disbursement of cash, speed up of collections, concentration banking. So pag sinabing concentration banking, you'll get the service of a bank to do the collection for you. So I'm not sure kung naririnig nyo na, you're actually outsourcing the collection with the bank, no? Ang purpose kasi nun is una, si bank, ang service na ino-offer niya is wala nang clearing. Kasi 'di ba local checks clears for a day yata and regional checks for 3 days, no? So for concentration banking, since you have outsourced it with another bank, so walang clearing, meaning pagka-receive ni bank ng payment, it will go directly to your bank balance. No? Number 4, lock boxes. No? So it refers to the collection procedure in which payers send their payments to a nearby post office box that is emptied by the firm's bank several times daily. Itong lock boxes, while this is still true maybe in other countries, I'm not very familiar whether this is still happening here in the Philippines. No? But for the purpose of our discussion, later on, we'll also be presenting problems on lock boxes. No? The fifth one is direct send. Slowing down disbursement. Ito siguro focus tayo ng quick lang dito sa slowing down disbursement. No? Since we're controlling or managing cash flow, syempre, kailangan yung mga disbursements natin, meaning whenever we pay our accounts payable, ano bang kailangan ang dapat natin mindset? Is it to pay on time or maximize? Well, paying on time is actually maximizing the terms then of the debt. No? So sabihin natin na meron kang AP, ang term is 30 days. No? So do we pay on the first day or do we pay on the 30th day? So the answer is, syempre, dun i-maximize mo yung term, no? So that you will have the money still rolling, no? Instead of just simply paying it with your creditor, no? Okay, so number 7 is employing, collecting agent or collecting center. So ito yung, not sure kung familiar kayo, pero ito yung mga tumatawag pag malapit na mag-due yung mga bills, no? So you outsource it with a collecting center or agent to do the collection for you kasi it fast track down, no? Kasi ayaw pala nakukulitan ni client, ayaw fina-follow up sa bills niya. So kaysa tawagan mo siya ng umagang-umaga or gabing-gabi, so magbayad na lang. Okay. Number 8, estimating cash balance. So it's called the Baumol model. So it's simply treating cash as an inventory. So therefore, if it's an inventory, we have the optimum balance. No? So later on, we'll also discuss that. Ito na yung later on. No? So that Baumol model, it's also called the economic conversion quantity. So that's ECQ. O class, ha? ECQ is not yung very popular these days, no? So ECQ this time, it's the economic conversion quantity. So we derive it by the square root of 2 times the conversion cost. Conversion cost lang naman dito is the cost to convert, no? Kasi 'di ba pinag-uusapan natin kanina, dapat we're managing cash this time, no? So in order for us to manage cash, ang gusto natin, yung other assets natin is readily available to be converted to cash. No? So conversion cost in this case is how much do you pay to convert another asset into cash. Of course, the demand for cash, this is a product of your budgeting or cash flow budgeting. No? Opportunity cost, syempre, for a particular asset, there's this so-called opportunity cost, no? Kasi you'll be converting it to cash. So therefore, opportunity cost in this case is yung foregone benefit, no, for that particular asset. Later on, we'll also discuss more of that. Actually, let's go to sample problems. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, lockbox system. So puntahan ko ulit yung solution natin. So lockbox system. So ito lang naman yung sabi kanina, describe kung paano yung lockbox, no? So sabi post office, and then there's a bank that will open it, no? And kasi doon nilalagay yung pera na bayad sa'yo. So, and then you outsource it with another bank who actually opens the lockbox in the post office and post it in your bank balance. No? So, let's try to answer the problem. No? The requirements are, how much is the advantage or disadvantage of lockbox system offered by China, Land, and Metro? O sige, simulan ko kay China and then try natin later on yung kay Land and Metro. Sige. So it takes Cell Essentials several days to receive and deposit collections from customer to its 3 banks. Therefore, lockbox system is being considered. Kasi class, 'di ba, not necessarily naman na nakuha mo na yung cheque, cash na siya agad. Remember, what we're discussing here is the actual cash management, no? Kaya nga iniiwasan natin yung na-deposit na nabigay na sa'yo ni customer yung cheque pero hindi mo pa rin na-deposit sa banko mo. Therefore, we cannot quantify that as cash per se, no? Okay. So, ngayon, tignan natin yung data, no? Kay China muna. Sabi, average daily collection, 500,000. Current float, 7 days. Current float, ito nga yung length of time na yung collection mo will just stay, sabi natin, sa drawer mo kasi hindi mo naman agad na-deposit, no? Expected float if lockbox is availed, ito na lang yung floating time, meaning ito na lang yung natitirang time na hindi talaga na ipapasok yung amount doon sa bank balance mo. So remember, currently, nung wala yung lockbox system, it's 7 days. Nung nagkaroon na ng lockbox system, it becomes 5 days. Okay? Rate of return, so, well, that's the interest rate of return, 10%. How much ngayon yung cost of lockbox system? So that's 8,000 per month for China. So isa-isa natin. The amount of cash freed per day is 500,000. Ito lang yung average daily collection mo. Multiply by the number of days cash is freed. So 7 less 5. So that's 2 days. So you'll arrive with the amount of cash freed up, which is, how much is this? 1 million. Multiply by the rate of return. Ito na yung, supposedly, ito na yung amount na ma-generate mo from reducing the floating time. So that's 10% or 100,000 pesos. Syempre, since the problem would like to get the net advantage or disadvantage, you'll need to deduct the total cost of lockbox system. So in this case, 8,000 pero class monthly. So 8,000 multiplied by 12 to get the total lockbox system cost. So you'll get the net advantage of 4,000 pesos. Sige, patry naman ako, ayan, using the same approach, patry ako nung kay Land and Metro. Land Bank and Metro Bank. Okay? Sige na, pa-solve lang ako. Okay. So, hopefully, same tayo ng sagot. Kay Land Bank at kay Metrobank. So pares pa tayo nakuha, 2,800 kay Land Bank and 30,000 kay Metrobank. I think ang nabago lang dito ay yung treatment ng cost, no? Kasi kanina kay China, it's monthly. This time, quarterly kay Land Bank and semi-annual naman kay Metrobank. So that's your net advantage. Okay. Sige. So I hope that's clear enough. Tatlong beses na natin yung tinignan. Let's now go to, okay. So last sample problem for this topic on economic conversion quantity. Sige, isa-isahin ulit natin. Pero this time, nilagay ko na ulit yung formula. Pero kung napansin mo yung approach ko sa problem, I always lay all the given information. No? Then I just derive. No? Kasi I'm not sure kung nagtuturo pa rin si Ma'am Malyari. Pero nung undergrad, siya kasi yung nagsasabi na whenever you write, dun daw sa sinusulat mo, at least 20% ng sinusulat mo na pumapasok na agad dun sa memory mo, no? So imagine sinusulat mo pa lang 'yon. Hindi mo pa memorize and all, no? But 20% of that pumapasok na daw agad sa memory mo. So ganun yung gawin nating approach. Kaya nakita mo hindi ako agad basta solve lang. Kailangan sinusulat ko yung formula. So lalong-lalo na dun sa ratio analysis, no, sa financial statement analysis natin kasi sobrang daming ratios nun. Hindi natin alam kung ano yung lalabas. So we have to be familiar. Hindi natin alam kung ano yung lalabas sa quiz. Hindi na natin alam sa board exam. So we have to be familiar with each of the ratio. So every time na syempre you practice, no? So you solve all the problems sa book or other materials. Pero yun nga, for you to be familiar without even memorizing the formulas, every time na nag-solve ka, isulat mo yung formula. So okay. Anyway, let's do this problem on economic conversion quantity. Assume that the fixed cost of selling marketable securities is 10 pesos per transaction. So this is your conversion cost. The interest rate on marketable securities is 8% per year. The 8% here, this is the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost kasi kasi ito yung marketable securities, ito daw yung magiging earnings niya kung mag-stay siya as marketable security. But since we're going to convert it to cash, wala na yung chance natin to earn from it, no? So that's why it's a foregone benefit. So we call it opportunity cost. Okay? The company estimates that it will make cash payments of 12.5 million per quarter. This is your demand for cash. But this time we express it in 1 year, no? So that's 12.5 million times 4. Saan nakuha yung 4? 4 quarters kasi, no? So there are 4 quarters in a year, so kaya multiply by 4. Pag sinabi namang semi-annual, so multiply by 2. Okay? Pag monthly, multiply by 12. No? So depende dun sa hinihingi ng problem. So now let's calculate this one. Optimal transaction size, this is actually your ECQ or your economic conversion quantity. So paano nga yung formula natin? Sabi 2 multiply by the conversion cost, which is 10, multiply by the demand for cash, which is 50 million, over the opportunity cost, and then get the square root. O, sige, try nyo munang pindutin sa calculator nyo. Excel kasi yung ginamit ko. But we should get the same values. Okay, so hopefully parehas tayo ng sagot. It's 111,803. Siyempre wala kang Excel no during exams. Pero ito yung pinaka-practice mo, no? So, try mo pindutin ulit sa calculator mo. Sana yan yung makuha mo. Next, average cash balance. So, how to get the average cash balance? Nilagay ko rito. It's ECQ divided by 2. So, provided na sa atin, na-calculate na natin how much is our ECQ. That's 111,803 divided by 2. So, we get 55,901. Next question is number of times during the year the company has to convert marketable securities to cash. So the calculation for that is number of times, so that demand for cash over your ECQ. How much is the demand for cash? Na-calculate natin kanina, that's 50 million. How much is the ECQ? Na-calculate na rin natin kanina, that's 111,000. So let's just derive the formula. It's demand for cash, 50 million over your ECQ, 111,803. So that's 447 times. Natanong kung ilang beses daw magko-convert ng marketable securities. No? So 447 times. Next requirement is total cost of conversion. No? So alam naman natin kanina, cost ng conversion natin is 10 per marketable security. So ngayon, ang tinatanong is how much is the total conversion cost? Multiply mo lang dun sa number of times to convert. So that's 4,472. Finally, you're asked to compute for the carrying cost of cash. That's actually equivalent to the total conversion cost, but this time it's calculated as the average cash balance multiplied by the opportunity cost. Na-compute na natin kanina yung average cash balance. It's 55,901 and given yung opportunity cost na 8%. So that's 4,472. Okay, so we've covered all the topics on working capital and cash.
This has been your instructor, Mark Gibson. Thank you for learning with us. See you in our next discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See ya!